Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me for the live stream. Hello there. Please hit the like button. Say hello in the chat. And if you want to join our chat, please do subscribe to my channel. Hi there, Hugo. Hi there, Pictor. Thanks for joining me for this impromptu live stream. We're going to talk about the charges that are going to be filed against Alec Baldwin and Halyna Gutierrez Reed, who was the armorer on the film set, the Rust film set, where Halyna Hutchins was killed by a gun that was discharged by Alec Baldwin on the film set. So we're going to talk about the 2 counts of involuntary manslaughter and why Alec Baldwin and Halyna Gutierrez Reed are facing 5 years in prison. We're going to talk about that and the elements, the defenses, the possible defenses that Alec Baldwin may have, the penalties, and your questions. So please do join me. So hi there, I'm Michele Hagan. I'm a legal analyst and a former prosecutor. You may recognize me. I provided a lot of coverage on the Elizabeth Holmes trial and several other cases. So this video is for education information. It's also making myself available. So if you have questions about the charges against Alec Baldwin, actor Alec Baldwin on the Rust film set when Halyna Hutchins was tragically killed. So she was a 42-year-old cinematographer. And also Joel Souza, who was the film director, was also hit in the shoulder by one of the bullets. And I'm going to talk about the 3 things that I think are very problematic for the defense and why this case could be very difficult for the defense as well. So we'll see. And I'll talk a little bit about New Mexico law. I'm not a New Mexico lawyer. I'm a California lawyer, but I'll do my best to answer your questions. Okay. So any questions so far? So please do hit the like button. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate it. This last minute live stream that we're doing here. All right. So Pictor, this is the 3rd person that played. Yes. And Pictor, he's one of the 3 things I'm going to talk about. His name is Dave Halls. He's the assistant film director. He's the one that allegedly handed Alec Baldwin the gun. And yes, he did take a plea bargain. We're going to talk about that. All right, Halyna Gutierrez only had experience in 1 previous film. Yes, and I'll get to that. Okay, so let's go ahead and go over what the charges are. So there's 2 counts of involuntary manslaughter. And when I start preparing a case for trial, I look at the jury instruction, okay? So the jury instruction is what, this is what the jury's going to be told after all the evidence is in. Here are the rules. Here are the elements that you need to look for in order to determine whether to find Alec Baldwin or Halyna Gutierrez Reed guilty of involuntary manslaughter. And what's interesting is the DA is bringing 2 charges of involuntary manslaughter. Basically, what it boils down to is if they want to choose the higher involuntary manslaughter, they would have to find more than negligence. If they're going to choose the lower standard of involuntary manslaughter, it would be just mere negligence. So let me read to you the elements. So for you, the jury, to find the defendant guilty of involuntary manslaughter, the state, the prosecution must prove to your satisfaction beyond a reasonable doubt each of the following elements of the crime. 1, that Alec Baldwin and Halyna Gutierrez Reed should have known of the danger involved by Alec Baldwin's actions or by holding a gun in the hand, right? And they acted with a willful disregard for the safety of others. Willful disregard for the safety of others. And that act caused the death of Halyna Hutchins. And it happened in New Mexico on, I think it was October 21st, 2021. So the standard for negligence would be criminal negligence. So criminal negligence, what is that? That would have to be a reckless act or a willful act. So it's not a particularly high standard. The question is whether the jury is going to find the higher involuntary manslaughter charge which is to say they acted with more than negligence. And the way the prosecution could prove this is by saying that there's a pattern of mistakes and failures, failing to follow procedure. That would be more than mere negligence. If they just picked up the gun and there hadn't been any other prior problems on the set, and there was a citation issued, I think, after the fact in April of this year. I think it was April of 2021. I'm not sure if it's before or after this happened, but if they can get in that work safety violation regarding gun safety, the film producers were apparently fined for that. If they can get that into evidence, that would be incriminating and not helpful to the defense, so to speak. Okay. So that would be the jury instruction. So again, it's whether it's negligence or more than negligence. And if they're charged and if they're found guilty of the higher charge, there's a firearm enhancement. And if the jury finds a negligent use of a deadly weapon, which would be the firearm, then both of these defendants are looking at a mandatory 5 years in prison. Okay, so if they're convicted on the firearm enhancement, mandatory 5 years in prison. If they're convicted on the involuntary manslaughter without the firearm, they're looking at up to 18 months in jail and a $5,000 penalty. So whether they get the lower or the higher involuntary manslaughter, I'm going to call it, they're looking at 18 months and $5,000 fine. If they get the involuntary manslaughter with a firearm enhancement, they're looking at 5 years in prison. Okay. So I hope that's helpful. All right. Let me see. What are the questions? Hannah Gutierrez. Okay. I made it to the live. Yay. Thank you, Asigal. Okay. Thank you, all of you, for joining me. The smack of the Brandon Lee, but nobody was charged. Yeah, that's interesting point. Baldwin had a live bullet. Yes, I'm going to get to that. You guys are jumping the gun on me, so to speak. Nice pun, right? Did he know about the live bullet? Yeah, that's a question. I think they can get the higher minute. I think they, Aussie girl, I think they have a big shot, a great shot, the prosecution in getting the higher manslaughter charge. Definitely. So, all right, let's take a look at the three factors that I think are going to be very difficult for the defense. Although it's a criminal case now, that means they have to get, and in New Mexico, it's also 12 jurors. 12 jurors have to unanimously decide of their guilt. And if they get all 12 jurors, that's a unanimous decision, and that's what you need to convict someone in New Mexico. Okay, but if the defense gets one juror who thinks there's reasonable doubt, thinking that it's reasonable to believe that Alec Baldwin has already said that he was told the gun was cold. It was a cold gun. He was handed a cold gun, meaning there was no live ammo. But here's the problem. The investigators have found that there were 5 live rounds on the set. 1 in Alec Baldwin's gun belt, there was a live round. 2, there was a live round found in the box of dummy bullets that was on the prop cart. 3, there was, I have to look at my notes, I think one of the other actors had a live round on them as well. And there was also the live round that was found in the dummy box of bullets. Was there were fingerprints, and those fingerprints go to Halyna Gutierrez Reed. So we have fingerprints on the box where there's a live round found. We have a live round on Alec Baldwin's gun belt. We also have, so I'm trying to see if there's anything else. Then there's 3 other live rounds of ammo. Sorry, I'm having trouble speaking here. Okay, love all your videos, Michele. Thanks, CBO. Thank you. Okay, so the 3 things. 3 things. 1, the live round on Alec Baldwin's gun belt, the other live rounds on the set. Number 2, the plea bargain of one of the other, we'll call him a co-defendant, Dave Halls, who was the assistant director. He's already taken a plea. He's got, he pled to a negligent use of the firearm. He's looking at a suspended sentence and 6 months probation. Now, he's going to be helpful to the prosecution, right? Don't we assume that? Don't we assume that he's going to testify? He's the one, apparently, that handed the gun that was loaded with the live round to Alec Baldwin. Dave Halls is going to be the one that's going to be if he testifies, he's going to be the one explaining the circumstances of what happened. But he could be discredited because there's a lawsuit. Alec Baldwin filed a civil, not a criminal, a civil lawsuit against several of the crew members, including Dave Halls. Dave Halls also is countersuing. So one of the things that could come up, I would imagine, in cross-examination of Dave Halls is regarding this lawsuit, right? So he has a motive to, so to speak, lie or fabricate things. I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. Okay. I'm reading the questions here in the comments. Yes, you can super chat me. I put a link. Thank you. I put a link for the super chat in the chat box, and I also put it in the description box below the video. So thank you, everybody, for joining me. And thank you again to all of those who subscribe to this channel. I really appreciate it. And all your great analysis and your questions. Okay, let me see. Wow, I didn't know about the fingerprints. Yep. He pled and through. Yep. Well, we don't know, Fungi, if he's thrown him under the bus yet. We'll have to see. But he certainly has. I mean, if there's a pending civil action that Dave Halls is being sued and he's countersuing Alec Baldwin, I mean, can't the defense bring that up in cross-examination, right? As to maybe he's making this stuff up about the circumstances of, what conversations they may have had, whether or not this was a cold gun, meaning no live ammo. But the fact that there are 5 other live rounds on the set, one of which is in Alec Baldwin's gun belt. Secondly, where Gutierrez Reed's fingerprints, allegedly, again, this is all allegations because it's not evidence until it comes into the courtroom, right? So her fingerprints on the box that contains another live round, it's creating all these circumstances that show, and I'll read you this. This is what the DA has said. The DA has said that the evidence shows a pattern of criminal, not negligent, criminal disregard for safety on the Rust film set. In New Mexico, there is no room for film sets that don't take our state's commitment to gun safety and public safety seriously. So this DA is taking this case very serious. And the fact that there's a pattern of criminal disregard, maybe the 5 rounds that were on the set, maybe I think it's a prior work safety violation regarding the gun safety. I'm sure there's other crew members who may have other testimony that may say that it was a gun safety issue. They weren't following procedures on the set or whatever. We'll have to see how that happens. Okay, let me see. Let's see. Suing for the appearance of innocence. Well, I think Fungi, you're probably relating to the lawsuit that Alec Baldwin filed. Well, it's a civil case. Civil's a lower standard, right, than a criminal case. Criminal case requires proof beyond reasonable doubt. Civil case is usually something less than that. Okay. I don't know exactly what the standard the correct words are in New Mexico because I'm a California lawyer, but I did my research. Okay. Why did Alec Baldwin not plead and instead gamble? Yeah, good question, Pictor. Probably because they were probably asking him to plead to one of the counts of involuntary manslaughter. And that may have great ramifications for his career. Maybe they were asking for some jail time. Maybe they weren't going to give him a suspended sentence. I don't know. But when you have a live round on your gun belt, you're the one who held the gun and somebody was killed. I would think most people, and I think most jurors are going to want someone to be held accountable for this. So, he may not have been offered a plea. Yeah, that's also true. He may not. Neither one of them may have been offered a plea. Okay, hit the like button, you guys. Let me know that you're there. Please do send your questions. Okay, so I want to get to, let's see. I'm looking at my notes. So the DA has indicated they're going to be filing the charges at the end of the month. Okay, we're going to assume these are the charges, the 2 involuntary manslaughter, one of them with the firearm enhancement, which will trigger the mandatory 5-year prison sentence if they're convicted. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to point out was, looking quickly here at my notes. Okay, just to remind you again that the DA has to prove that if you find the defendant guilty of involuntary manslaughter, one, Alec Baldwin and Halyna Gutierrez Reed should have known the danger involved. The danger involved of holding a gun, making sure that it was not loaded with live ammo, not pointing at people, right? You don't want to, whenever you point a gun at, you're not supposed to be pointing guns at people. I'm sure they're going to go over in the case about what the procedure was on the set. Did everyone follow the procedure? Had there been any prior complaints? And by the way, there's been a lot of news media that has said that several of the crew members went to the shooting range with live ammo. None of that is true, apparently. So it's just going to be focusing on what happened on the set when Alec Baldwin was handed that gun. What was the procedure? And apparently there's evidence out there that there were 3 guns that were on the prop cart, 3 different guns. And one of them was picked up by Dave Halls and handed to Alec Baldwin. And then tragically and unfortunately, that had a loaded live ammo, which was discharged when he fired the gun. It hit Halyna Hutchins in the chest, went through her chest, and hit the shoulder of Joel Souza, who was the director of the film. So, and we also have the 2 pending civil cases that Alec Baldwin is suing several of the crew members, including Dave Halls, who took a plea deal in this case. He's already pled to negligent use of a firearm. He got a suspended sentence, no jail time, but he's on probation for 6 months. I'm sure he's going to be the critical witness on the stand in the trial against Alec Baldwin and Halyna Gutierrez Reed. If his testimony is, that they, whether it was called out as a cold gun, meaning that it didn't have live ammo or not, he's, I'm sure, going to be the witness who's going to fill in the details about what happened when Alec Baldwin was handed this gun and what were the procedures on the set or the procedures that were not followed on the set. Because according to the DA, there was a lot of mistakes. There was a pattern of criminal disregard for safety on the gun set. Okay, so let me look and see what your comments are. Lassie Bauer, hi there. As a non-American and someone who's been on the film set many times and ones with many prop guns, I can't understand how there would be any, yeah, I agree with you, how there would be any live ammo on or even close to the set. Yeah. Thank you for that comment, Lassie. Not only was there live ammo, there were 5 live ammos. One, the one bullet that was in the gun, the same live bullet that was on Alec Baldwin's gun belt. Now, I'm sure he's going to claim that he was handed that gun belt from the prop department. He didn't know anything about a live ammo. He didn't know about the other 4 live ammo. He didn't know about the live ammo that was in the gun, the dummy box of gun bullets. He didn't know about the live ammo that one of the other actors had on their gun belt. So it's going to be no knowledge. He was going to say, he's going to point the fingers at probably the armorer, Halyna Gutierrez Reed, and say it was her job, it was her responsibility to make sure that the gun was not loaded with live ammo. It was Dave Hall's responsibility to check that it was not loaded with live ammo. And he was told, he trusted his crew to give him a gun that was not loaded with live ammo. He did not know. Okay. So the question is, should he have known it was a danger to another? Well, we'll have to see. And criminal negligence is recklessness. So they're going to have to prove that the conduct on the set was reckless. They had a disregard for safety, etc. Right? So Alec Baldwin's going to point the finger at the armorer, Halyna Gutierrez Reed. Hannah's probably going to point the finger at Alec. I think she has already said that it's been stressful working conditions. She was distracted. In other words, there was no more than negligence. Maybe there was negligence, but not more than negligence. So we'll have to see what the evidence comes out. So please hit the like button. And if you want to super chat and support me making these videos, I greatly appreciate it. So there's a super chat link in the chat box and the description box below the video when it gets posted. Okay, let me look at your notes here. I've never seen an actor checking any prop, lights, camera, or anything else before a shoot. That's what you have a professional prop crew for. True. He's going to say, look, he hired these people. They're supposed to be experts in dealing with gun safety. There's a procedure and protocol. That's their job. I'm over here. I'm acting. Okay. I rely and I trust them. So is Alec Baldwin responsible for what was happening on the film set? So, what's Halyna Gutierrez going to say, the armorer? She's going to say, look, I was stressed out. I was distracted. I was following the procedures. It's not my responsibility to call the gun cold. I didn't hand the gun to Alec Baldwin. So it'll be interesting. Okay. Fungi. I think Baldwin's defense is, I don't know, their fault. Yeah, right. He's going to be pointing the finger. He's going to say, look, he hired these people. They were screened. They're supposed to be experts. They're supposed to know the protocol. I relied on them. It's not my fault. I was told it was a cold gun. I relied on them. I didn't have any knowledge. I didn't know. And the live ammo on my gun belt, well, that came from the prop department. I didn't know about that. Maybe that's what he's going to argue. Okay. And getting to that point, there's a defense here, and it's a very valid defense that Alec Baldwin and Halyna Gutierrez Reed could make. And that defense is, to involuntary manslaughter, it's an accident. It was a mistake. It was an accident. Now, that's where the whole pattern of criminal disregard for gun safety or the environment or the circumstances on the set is where the jury's going to have to make a call, is to determine whether it was truly an accident, those 5 extra live rounds. Now that shows that there was clear negligence on the set, in my opinion. When you have live rounds around, the question is, who's responsible for that? Is it the person who's the armorer, who's responsible for the gun safety? Is it the assistant director who handed Alec Baldwin the gun? Is it Alec Baldwin who discharged the gun that tragically killed Halyna Hutchins and injured Joel Souza? I mean, who is the jury going to blame here? And again, the jury has to choose between those two counts. Is it that they acted with more than negligence? In other words, there's a pattern of criminal disregard for for the gun safety, or is it something that's just mere negligence? Okay, which is a lesser standard. So again, to either one of those involuntary manslaughter charges, either defendant or both defendants can claim, look, it was an accident. And that could be a defense. And we'll have to see what comes in as evidence. Okay, I'm just speculating. I'm doing hypotheticals here. It's just my opinion. Okay, let me look at the chat here. Baldwin is the owner of the film, yes. But there's going to be a question as to what was his role as a producer. right? What is he responsible for? I know there was a wrongful death lawsuit that's already been settled with the producers, including Alec Baldwin. It's confidential, so we don't know what the details of the settlement are. But when we get to the trial, I'm sure they're going to be putting experts on who are going to talk about what's the proper procedure and protocol with gun safety on film sets. So it may be a battle of the experts, who the defense puts on, who the prosecution puts on. But if the prosecution is able to show that there is a pattern, and they're saying there's a pattern of criminal, they refer to as a pattern of criminal disregard for safety on the film set. If they can show that there's a pattern, the jury is more than likely going to convict one or both of these defendants of one of these charges of involuntary manslaughter. Of course, the prosecution is probably going to argue for the higher one, saying there was more than negligence. In other words, a pattern of criminal disregard. The defense is going to argue, innocent. They're innocent. They didn't know. There was no negligence here. Therefore, find them not guilty. Okay. And also, it was an accident. Okay. But if you have circumstances that show that it was more than an accident, that's going to be tough for the defense. Okay, let me look at it seems to me, and his band, hi there, and his band, it seems to me that Hannah was given responsibility, but not authority. Yes, I'm sure they're going to argue that. With all the access that others had to the prop gun, she was given no respect. Well, we'll see what the evidence is, but, if that's her job, and I think the DA has said, Halyna Hutchins would be alive if not for the mistakes that Alec Baldwin, Dave Halls, and Hannah Gutierrez Reed made. So, whether her claims of being distracted in a stressful work environment, which may be true, whether that amounts to enough for a jury to say there was no negligence, I don't know. That's not going to be easy. Prosecutors will show proof of recklessness. Yeah. And if they can show recklessness, that equals criminal negligence, which could give either one of these defendants the higher charge of involuntary manslaughter. Didn't the crew walk off a couple times because of unsafe conditions? Yeah, I heard that reported, but we'll have to see if that's true, and if it comes into evidence. Okay, Lacey, how much will Baldwin's personality and history of being a hothead and, in my opinion, self-absorbed, going to play for the jury's decision? Well, that's a good point, Lassie. And my question to all of you, do you think Alec Baldwin's going to take the stand? Do you think Alec Baldwin's going to take the stand and testify in his defense? What do you think? Is anyone going to weigh in here? What do you think? He's an actor. He already did his interview. Was it 60 Minutes or what did he go on? And I think he will take the stand. That's my bet. Alan says yes. Would that be deemed irrelevant? Would fungi, what be deemed irrelevant? You got to let me know. Okay, so 100% he can't stay away from the limelight. Well, every defendant has a right to take the stand. They also have the right not to take the stand. He can remain silent under the Fifth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. Neither one of these defendants have to prove they're innocent. They don't have to say a word. They can just sit there through the trial. But if they do take the stand, they will be cross-examined. So I think Alec Baldwin will probably make a decision as to whether or not he testifies, depending on how Dave Halls comes across or any other crew member who may say some things that are incriminating or show this pattern of criminal disregard of gun safety. So it's going to be a call for our client, for the defendant to make to determine whether or not they want to take the stand and testify. All right. Alan says he thinks more of himself. Well, I know he gets a bad rap in the press. They may not just put him on the stand after interviews being so disastrous. Yeah. Well, it's always interesting to me when they're facing an investigation, a criminal investigation, why they would go on 60 Minutes or wherever he was on, ABC News, I don't know, and give an interview. Why would you do that when you're being investigated for a criminal, but sometimes people want to get ahead of the story. He wanted to say he, put his innocence out there. I have no doubt he believes he did nothing wrong. And, maybe he'll be acquitted. Maybe he'll be found innocent. All the defense needs is one juror because this is a criminal case and they have to have all 12 to agree to convict someone. Okay, I can tell you guys don't like Alec Baldwin. He's arrogant and narcissistic. He probably will. Yeah, Joan Claire with tears rolling down. Very interesting. Okay, also, you guys hit that like button. And please do subscribe to this channel. And thank you for subscribing to this channel. I appreciate everyone supporting my work. And if you want to do a super chat, I'll put a link in the description box below the video. And I think there's a link in the chat box. Okay, any other questions? Again, the penalties. If he's convicted, either of these defendants are convicted of the higher involuntary manslaughter, which is to show there's more than negligence, which could be this criminal pattern, this pattern of, I always have to look at it because it's such weird, pattern of criminal disregard for gun safety. That would be more than negligence. That would trigger the higher involuntary manslaughter. If they also get the enhancement for the firearm use, which triggers a 5-year mandatory prison sentence, then that's 5 years the defendants are looking at. If the jury decides the lower involuntary manslaughter, which is just mere negligence, then these defendants are looking at up to 18 months in jail and a $5,000 fine. Okay, and again, it's a criminal case, unanimous. All 12 have to agree to convict. If one person decides not to convict, that will be a hung jury, and the defense will have an opportunity. The prosecution will have an opportunity to retry the case. All right, and those pending civil lawsuits make it a little sticky for the prosecution, right? I don't think he'll be found guilty of anything more than perhaps negligence. Unlikable or not, I can't see what motive he'd have for a shooting. Yeah, well, you don't have to have a motive. The fact that if there's a lot of gun safety issues on the set, that could easily trigger the higher involuntary manslaughter. If this has just been an isolated incident, like with the Bruce Lee circumstance, if it had just, there was no other live ammo on the set, there were no other complaints, none of that. If none of that happened, I could definitely see a jury maybe acquitted or possibly finding the lesser involuntary manslaughter. But the fact that there are 5 live ammos, 5 live bullets, one of which was on Alec Baldwin's gun belt, one which was found in the box of dummy bullets, that alone shows that they're not following the proper protocol or procedure. And Hannah Gutierrez fingerprints are on that box. Hannah Gutierrez Reed's fingerprints are on that box. That's going to be very problematic for the defense. Okay, he pulled the trigger with the same disregard for, Pictor, the comment about him pulling the trigger, apparently he had practiced before this live round went off. I think he had shot the gun maybe once or twice prior to that. And then I think it was thereafter, I think it was the 3rd or 4th shot when the live ammo was discharged and tragically killed Halyna Hutchins. All right. Scroll to the top of the chat. Oh, yes. Thank you. Problematic for Hannah. Yes. I think it is more problematic for Hannah because of her fingerprints on the gun box. Although she could say, look, of course my fingerprints are there. I'm constantly pulling out dummy rounds. It doesn't mean that I knew that it was a live round. And besides, I didn't hand the gun to Alec Baldwin. I never called it a cold gun. I don't know what she's going to say. What the evidence is to show that it was a stressful or distracting working environment, which is what she's claiming. It's a terrible tragedy for everybody involved. The defense, I'm sure both defenses are going to argue that it was an accident. The other question I had is, are these guys going to be tried together, or are they going to be separate trials? And speaking of which, hit that like button. The process. So at the end of the month, the DA is going to be formally filing these charges against Alec Baldwin and Halyna Gutierrez Reed. The next step is what's called an arraignment. So both of them will appear either live or via Zoom. I don't know how they're going to be doing it in New Mexico. And they're going to be advised what the charges are against them, and then they're going to be entering a plea. The next step would be what's called the preliminary hearing. So we have the preliminary hearing before the trial. So at the preliminary hearing, the prosecution has to basically put on enough evidence to convince a judge that these 2 counts of involuntary manslaughter with the firearm enhancement took place, and that these defendants are responsible for those crimes. Just enough evidence. It's not reasonable doubt, and it's not putting on your entire case. It's just the prosecution putting on their case. The defense typically doesn't put on a case in the prelim. They just do a lot of cross-examination. Okay, once the judge, it's called bounds over these defendants for these crimes, that the crimes were committed and they were committed by these defendants, then it's set for trial. Now, the DA is saying that the prelim will probably take place in 2 months. Now, that's assuming, I think it's assuming, that neither one of these defendants waive time. And in the United States, we have what's called speedy trial rights. There's a certain amount of time in which the prosecution has to bring the charges or the preliminary hearing. And if either one of these defendants waive that time, then the prelim could be pushed off more than 2 months. And I think it probably will be. So this will be a slow train to the trial, okay? So once the prelim is done, they're both bound over for trial. Then the trial date will be set. Now, between the prelim and the trial, there could be plea offers to these defendants. We'll also have to see what's going on with these civil cases, these civil lawsuits, and whether any evidence comes out in the depositions or in the production of documents or anything that could be used, because you can use that in the criminal case. All right. So we're going to be watching what happens with both of these civil case and the criminal case. Okay. And whether they're going to be tried together or separately, we'll have to see. All those pretrial motions that we saw in the Elizabeth Holmes case could be very similar, wanting to separate the trials out, be tried separately, motions to keep certain evidence out. Now, one of the motions they may want to keep out is that workplace safety fine, when the producers were fined regarding issues with gun safety on the set, whether or not that's going to come into the criminal trial against Baldwin and Halyna Gutierrez Reed. We'll have to see. All right, let's see what else. What comments you guys have? The gun has 5 or 6 bullets. He had to check all of them if he's going to shoot a person. Yeah, that's a good point, Victor. Very good point. Aussie Girl sent, thank you very much, Aussie Girl. I appreciate it. Thank you for the super chat. That's very nice of you. One guy, he can say, why should he check when it's not his responsibility? Yeah, exactly. Exactly. He could say, why would I check? I rely on them. I trust them. But I don't know what the prosecution's going to say. The prosecution may say, hey, this is not an isolated incident. The fact that there were 5 rounds all over the set, the fact that they had been fined before, or I think it's before, for the work safety, the fact that Dave Halls testified that, allegedly, I don't know, I'm kind of speculating here, or maybe there's testimony that comes in that several crew members may have filed complaints regarding work safety. They all knew that it was a problem, and they were just trying to get this film done quickly. They were skipping over things, maybe. I don't know what the prosecution's going to say. But the fact that there was a live round on Alec Baldwin's gun belt, live round in the gun, Halyna Gutierrez's fingerprints on the box where live rounds were found, the fact that there were any live rounds on the set, that's going to be difficult to explain. And the fact that a 42-year-old woman lost her life, I think the jury's going to want to hold somebody accountable for this. So we'll have to see. All right. Let's see. Is the firearm law the same for handling prop guns as for real? Yes. Well, it's a firearm in use. It's a deadly weapon. So that would be the definition. The same for handling prop guns. Well, if it's a prop gun, to me, I think it's interesting they call it a prop gun when it's got live ammo in it. But if the gun's capable of firing and shooting someone, then the firearm laws do apply. And if it's a negligent use of a firearm, which is what Dave Halls, the guy that handed Alec Baldwin the gun, he's already pled. He took a deal. I got suspended sentence, 6 months probation, and he pled to negligent use of a firearm. So I'm sure he's going to be testifying. So his testimony, along with the 5 live rounds, along with the live bullet on Alec Baldwin's belt, those are going to be particularly problematic evidence for the defense. All right, prop guns are real guns. Yeah, why they call it? Again, words matter. They're calling it a prop. Remember when it first came out in the media, it was a prop gun. Like everyone's thinking, how do you kill someone with a prop gun? Because most people think a prop gun is like just a dummy gun, right? Well, why? It's not a prop gun. It's it's a gun that had live ammo in it. Yeah, and prop guns can be real guns when they have live guns. It's not a toy gun. Good comments, you guys. Do hit that like button. Thank you for joining me, everybody. Please do subscribe if you want to join our chat. Any other questions? Okay, so next up, charges at the end of the month. We'll have to see what the actual complaint says. Are there going to be any other charges? Right now, it's just the 2 involuntary with the 1 firearm enhancement, which if they're convicted, it's mandatory 5 years in prison. If they get either one of the involuntary charges without the firearm enhancement, they're looking at 18 months, up to 18 months in jail, and a $5,000 fine. Now, given that I assume neither one of these defendants have any criminal history, they could possibly, if they're convicted, they would be very lucky if they got a suspended sentence. In other words, no jail time. But there may be some jail time. I don't know that they're going to serve the up to 18 months. But if that firearm enhancement is triggered, they're looking at a mandatory. That means the judge has no discretion in the sentencing. Mandatory 5 years in prison. Okay. Thanks, Michelle. You're welcome, Asigal. Thank you for joining me. Andy's band, the trial. Yes. The venue is New Mexico, Santa Fe, New Mexico. I think it's the 1st District Judicial Court of New Mexico. So, by the way, you can go on the website of the DA's office, District Attorney of Santa Fe, New Mexico. You could also look at the court website, which is the 1st District Judicial. I think it's the 1st District Judicial Court, Santa Fe, New Mexico. You can just Google that. And you can follow it when they do post the complaint. And I'll also probably walk you through it when we see it, if it's worth doing that. And yeah, Santa Fe, are they going to, another question is, would they move the venue out of Santa Fe? Like they did in the OJ case, right? In OJ Simpson's case, they were killed in Santa Monica, but they were tried in downtown Los Angeles. So they moved the venue. In this case, I don't think they're going to move the venue. I don't know. Oh, and the other thing is, in New Mexico, I did my research. Again, I'm a California lawyer, so please do your own research and your own analysis, because this is simply my opinion. But I did the research, and it looks like cameras are allowed in the courtroom. So I'm sure this case, and I'm sure the upcoming arraignment, which will probably be within 30 days, I would imagine, would be the arraignment, or 45 days. Then there'll be the preliminary hearing. I'm sure that's going to get a lot of media attention, and so will the jury trial. So we'll have to see. So CH, hello there. Hi there. Thank you for joining us. Okay, any other questions? Any other questions, anyone? So the question is, will Dave Halls testify on behalf of the prosecution? Will he paint a picture of a film set that was reckless, that allowed 5 live ammos to be on the set, one of which was in the bullet that tragically killed Halyna Hutchins, that was discharged by Alec Baldwin. Will Hannah Gutierrez Reed's fingerprints on the box of dummy bullets, will that be incriminating towards her? Will the prosecution be able to show a pattern of criminal disregard for gun safety to get the higher involuntary manslaughter charge? And if they get that firearm enhancement charge, if they're found guilty, mandatory 5 years in prison. All right, let me see what else. Hugo, approximately when will it officially go to trial? Hugo, you always ask me these questions. There's never an official time, okay? And if a defendant waives time, typically, I'll just speak for in California. If you're charged with a felony, you usually, the defendant has the right to go to trial within 60 days, okay? But if they waive that, and they probably will, because of these civil cases that are going on, and probably because the defense needs time to prepare this, according to the DA, the preliminary hearing could be in 2 months. The trial could be any time after that, maybe within 6 months. But if they waive time initially, then the trial is definitely going to be more than 60 days out. So I would guess the trial would likely be within 6 months of the prelim. It could be 3 months of the prelim. I don't know. But, strategically, the defense and the prosecution are going to have to be paying attention to what's going on in these civil lawsuits, because if the information comes out in the depositions, right, in criminal cases, we don't have, when I was a prosecutor, we don't have the right to depose someone, right? In civil cases, you get to do the depositions, okay? Because in a civil case, Alec Baldwin doesn't have the right to remain silent, right? He can assert it. He can definitely assert it because he's facing these criminal charges that maybe the judge will allow that. But if in a deposition, if some of the other crew members testify as to, there was a reckless, they weren't following procedure regarding the gun safety, if that comes out in the deposition, then that can be useful in the criminal case. You see, so they're going to have to be paying attention. And whether or not they're going to sever these trials, whether Alec Baldwin's not going to want to be tried with Halyna or Hannah Gutierrez Reed. And again, that's up to the judge whether they grant separate trials like they did in the Elizabeth Holmes case. So we'll have to see. Okay, jury selection will be tough. Oh, I don't know about that, Hugo. There's certainly going to be a lot of questions about, do you own a gun? Are you licensed to have a gun, wherever? How do you use your gun? Is it for hunting? Is it, let's see, has anyone ever been a victim of a gun? Has anyone ever been killed by a gun? Any relatives? Did you receive any training in gun safety? Are you opposed to having a gun or not? All of those like gun safety type of questions. Right? Have you been following the case, to see if they're making any preliminary judgments regarding? Yeah, jury selection is always key. You always want, if you're the prosecution, you want to try to grab a coherent, a group of people that are all going to get along. If you're the defense, you want one outlier, you want somebody, or you want strong personalities, so that, maybe they're not all going to agree to unanimously convict your client. So, yeah, and the fact that there's probably going to be a lot of publicity around this case, jury selection is going to be interesting. I don't think it's going to be tough, but, because jurors are picked every day. And this case it's really going to come down to who you believe and what the explanation is for the 5 live rounds of ammo on the set. I mean, how did that happen? Somebody must have screwed up, right? Somebody's not following procedure. If it's found in the dummy box, it's on How did it get into Alec Baldwin's gun belt and the other actor's gun belt? Both had live ammo. I mean, doesn't that show that, they're just not, something's going on here. There's a lot of mistakes, possibly. Now, whether it's an accident, whether that arises to a defense, and you can convince a jury that, hey, this is simply an accident, and we don't really know where those 5 other live rounds came from. Don't pay attention to that. But, it was just an accident. And he was told it was a cold gun. She was told it was a cold gun. They're not responsible. It was simply an accident. It's a tragic, tragic circumstance. I don't know. We'll see. The prosecution's going to say, no. It's a pattern of criminal disregard for gun safety, and we don't tolerate that in New Mexico. And neither should you as a juror. Somebody should be held accountable. The evidence supports blah, blah, blah. I can go on, forever. It's recklessness. It's a failure. It's not following procedure, resulting in the death of Halyna Hutchins. Okay. Do you think the ABC interview will be used against him? You bet it will. There's pieces in that interview that, the prosecution has a lot, can do a lot with. Aussie, they may grant separate trials if Alec is blaming Hannah. Well, that's not really the standard. It's a good comment, Osagal. It's not whether they're blaming. It's a question of whether, what the New Mexico law says about severing trials. And that, again, is up to the judge to make a decision. But the fact that they're going to pointing fingers at each other, that's what co-defendants do all the time. So that's not enough to sever a trial. There has to be something more. Like in the Elizabeth Holmes case, the reason, I think it was Sonny Balwani, I can't remember which asked to sever, but the fact about the abuse, the alleged abuse that Elizabeth Holmes claims that she suffered at the hands of Sonny Balwani, and the impact and how that would affect her ability to help with her defense. Having an alleged abuser in the courtroom with you, that would be enough to convince a judge to sever the trial. Okay, what other questions? Let's see. The prosecution will definitely use the interviews he conducted. Yep. Let's see. If I remember correctly, they nailed Gutierrez Reed. Yep, right. Hey, that's why we defense attorneys, I was a prosecutor for many years. I've done defense work too, and I've certainly worked with a lot of my clients, a lot of attorneys, law students, and everyone else, but the public too, preparing their cases for trial. You don't want your client out there making statements, because that it can and will be used against them. But some people make the decision, and of course it's the client's decision to decide whether they're not going to give an interview. And sometimes they make that decision because they want to get ahead of the story, because they want to put their innocence out there. They want to explain what happened. And Alec Baldwin clearly said he didn't do anything wrong. He was told it was a cold gun. He relied on these people. How was he to know? Don't hold me responsible, right? But again, that's up to the jury to decide. And this case is going to come down to, what did the other people testify to? How did they explain the 5 live rounds that were also on the set? What is the expert witness going to testify to as to what the proper procedure is for gun safety on a film set? And whether or not the prosecution or the defense can convince, the prosecution has to convince all 12, the defense only needs 1 or more to not have their clients not convicted. Okay, let's see. What other questions? Picture, authorities have to send a clear message on gun handling. There will be consequences. I agree with you, Pictor. I think the jury's more than likely, if the evidence comes in as at this point, we don't know about what all the evidence is, but if the information that has been reported is reliable and is accurate, that I've been talking about, I think a juror will probably find on the lesser involuntary manslaughter. Okay. Gotcha. Thanks. Yep. Alan, is there a possibility that there's going to be an increase in charges? Good question, Alan. Not unless some new additional information comes out between now and the end of the month when they're filing. But they also, Alan, what they could do is they can also amend the charges too. They could add charges like they did, I think, in Elizabeth Holmes' case. They clarified some of the charges. They did what's called an amended superseding indictment, or a superseding indictment, which is where they amend the charges. There's a possibility of that. But I think that the DA believes that they have enough evidence, more than enough evidence, to convict on these 2 involuntary manslaughter. And again, the jury chooses between the 2. It's either or. It's not both. Okay. So the higher one is the more than negligence. The lower one is just mere negligence. Okay, which in other words is recklessness. Okay. So any other questions? Any other comments? Anybody? Did I cover everything? So again, firearm enhancement. If either one are convicted, mandatory, not discretionary, mandatory 5 years in prison in New Mexico. They're looking at 2 involuntary charges. The juror has to pick between the higher one, which is more than negligence. That would be the pattern of criminal disregard for gun safety, which is what the prosecution is claiming. 5 live rounds. The live round in the gun, the live rounds found in the dummy box, the live round on Alec Baldwin's gun belt, on the other actor's gun belt, etc. How does that happen? What's the procedure on the set? Why wasn't it followed? Either the April fine, the workplace safety fine that was issued against the producers regarding gun safety. Maybe there are some other complaints that were out there that the crew had made regarding gun safety on the set. I don't know. If there is, that's probably going to come in. What happens in these civil cases, in the depositions, in the requests for production of documents, in the interrogatories, which are the written questions that will be put out. These are lawsuits that Alec Baldwin filed civil lawsuit against some of the crew members, including Dave Halls. Dave Halls is countersuing. So is there information that's going to come out in the civil case that can be used in the criminal case? The ABC interview that Alec Baldwin, is that going to be played to the jury? Is that going to be incriminating? Will Alec Baldwin take the stand? Will they sever these trials? We'll have to see. All right. CH, thank you for your analysis. Looking for your analysis on Brian Laundrie's parents' case. Yeah, that case. Gabby Petito's parents' case against Brian Laundrie. If there's a note that Roberta Laundrie sent to Brian regarding giving him a shovel or providing him a shovel, wow, that's a bombshell. And that, many people out there early on that case, the emotional distress case that Gabby Petito's parents filed against Brian Laundrie's parents. Remember, many people out there said it was going to be thrown out. I'm like, nope. On constitutional grounds, it's like, whether or not the statement that the attorney Bertolino made could be used against the clients. And now, Gabby Petito's parents are trying to get the judge to allow them to include and name the attorney, Steve Bertolino. Wow. A whole bunch of new legal questions. Fascinating. But again, I'm a geek. So, and it also gives me an opportunity to share my information with you and to find out what you guys think. You're the ones doing the critical analysis. You're the ones telling me what you think about the evidence. Okay, it's great. Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Any other questions? Do you think they didn't charge Joel's injury? Oh, Aussie Girl, do you think they didn't charge for Joel's injury because he was a producer? No, the reason is they didn't charge on either one of the defendants on the injury because the bullet went through, tragic, went through Halyna's chest into Joel Souza, the director's shoulder. The reason neither one of these defendants are charged regarding the wounding of Joel Souza is because there's no charge of an unintentional battery in New Mexico. So they couldn't be charged. If Joel Souza had been tragically killed, that's another story. All right. So good question there, Asigal. CBO, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Anything else? Should we call it a wrap? Okay, so I'm probably going to do, I'm waiting for the prosecution's reply on Elizabeth Holmes' stay-at-home request. That's supposed to be filed this week. So maybe I'll do a live either tomorrow or Saturday or possibly Monday on that. I'll send you out a notification. So please do not only subscribe to this channel, but hit the notification bell so you're advised of that. Because I know a couple of you, for some reason, didn't get the notification on the last live. Also, big shout out to RJ Nunn. I hope I'm saying your name right. One of our fellow analyzers who helped me figure out how to organize my homepage better so you guys can see the live streams, easier to find everything. So you guys give me your feedback on that. And also I want to do a live possibly on the Idaho murder case, on the Brian Kohlberger case, where the 4 college students were tragically murdered. Because some of the stuff that's coming out in the reporting, I have big questions about. So let me know if you guys are interested in live. Do comment. Please do comment. And I posted some of the information on our community page too. So anything else? Hit that like button. All right. Are we done? It's a wrap. So thanks again for all of you for joining me. I appreciate you joining me on the impromptu live analysis. Thank you for your terrific questions, your terrific analysis, and your comments. Thank you again for subscribing to my channel, Michele's Analysis. Please do join us. Please join us by subscribing and supporting my work. Join us, analyzers, so we can have more of these live streams and I can talk to you guys. Like to see the Idaho live. Thank you, Alan. Yeah, I think it's very interesting. That case is very interesting. The dog. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go look at the live analysis I did initially on the arrest affidavit, Brian Kohlberger's arrest affidavit, and the questions I had. I think it's pretty fascinating. So please do take a look at that video. Okay, you're welcome, Picture. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thanks again for supporting the channel. Please do support my work by subscribing if you want to contribute to me making these videos and possibly getting a better set. Please do super chat me, and I appreciate all of you who have continued to support me. Thank you so much. That's it. Any other comments? Okay. All right, you guys have a nice, see you at the next live. Have a nice weekend. And again, look out for the notification when I go live on, oh, the super chat doesn't work. Well, I'll put it in the description box below the video too. Sorry about that, CH. For some reason, I don't know what's going on. There's always little technical glitches here and there. Anyway, okay, thanks you guys. Thanks for joining me.